Let's jump to our next segment. We got an artist, Dax. I loved a lot of Dax's music. He's a Christian. He kind of started out just more in the rap scene, had some rough lyrics and stuff, but I actually think that God's kind of transforming him. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, like, even though what we're about to play may be a little bit, if I was sitting down with them, and I think the interviewer did a good job kind of probing into it a little bit, but let's just get into it and let's see what he has to say about cursing in music.
I think in that space, people get hung up on cuss words, which to me is laughable, because I feel like a cuss word's a curse word. Mm-hmm. I feel like you don't need to say the F word to curse somebody, and I even feel like I don't want to cuss here, but All
right, we can stop there. Look, I agree with the second part.
Yeah.
You don't have to use a curse word to curse somebody. I think that was kind of what we were talking about with Taylor Swift, frankly.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be flippant about using bad language.
No. I mean, okay. So when I cut out swearing, it took me a little while and it was really intentional. And then there were a couple places in my life where it still wanted to hang on, right? For me, it was like playing hockey, being on the ice, and golfing, right? Mm-hmm. Very frustrating sport, that golf. And what I realized...
You listen to gangster rap while golfing?
I do not. But okay. I'm going to make a point here. Okay. It was when, in moments of frustration and anger, that I still wanted to swear. So if I'm listening to music that is bringing those things in, they're probably coming from a place of frustration and anger. And there's definitely a place to have those feelings expressed in music, but I want to express them in a very holy way, because there is holy anger, there is holy hurt, God does grieve, and we have that space, and I love David for bringing those things out in the Psalms. There's a place for us to do that. But when I'm in that space, it's not to be flippant. It's to feel that pain and to do it in still a God-honoring way. And I love that David does that. So my thinking is, if you're in a headspace where those words are being used, we need to reorient your headspace, not take away from grief, not take away from pain, not take away from anger. There's places for it. But we still want to express those things in a holy way. So even when I was in those headspaces, it was like, okay, just because it's easier for me to swear because someone slashed me, it's easier for me to swear because I shanked a shot, I still have to give that over to God too. Right. Even in the hard areas. I didn't do it anymore when I was driving. I didn't do it anymore in my vernacular. However, there were still these strongholds, and they needed to be broken too. So he's right in the sense that you can give a curse without cursing. But if you're cursing, you're probably not expressing your hurt and anger in a holy way. Right. And there's still a stronghold there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that, the fact is that the words, they do evoke an emotion. Yeah. For me, it's not necessarily golfing. It's more like when I've got a really, really good joke and I kind of need one of those words for the punchline, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, it's so true, because it's like, yeah, like it would be funnier with that word. Yeah, I would feel better listening and saying that word, right? But again, it's not about how we feel. It's about how we can honor God. And I just think that, in Dak's situation, look, I mean, I bet in 2 years he's going to look back on this interview and be like, yeah, maybe that probably was wrong, because we're all going through sanctification. We start at different points, right? Being a rapper, he's starting at a much different point.
I'm glad he's talking to Ruslan. Ruslan is a great podcast to listen to for people into music. Yeah. Keep going.
No. I mean, and just on your point, I think that it is something we should keep track of. I'm not perfect at it by any means. But, I think that there's one thing that we really want to drive with this podcast, whether it's jokes or what we're listening to on this. We really want to stray away from affirming sin. I think that that's where my biggest issue comes whenever we talk about this, because it's one thing to go, man, I slipped up. Man, I was raised this way and I can't, sometimes I slip up. We know a guy who is from a foreign country and it's hard for him to use the English language without having that word kind of like be a filler on occasion, right? And I understand that, right? But it's a difference with kind of going, well, it's okay, because that's more of an affirmation of sin. It's not really having that heart of repentance.
And always being there for people on the journey, but not affirming. Mm-hmm. So there's grace and mercy and peace, and we're not going to flip out about it, and we're not going to become pharisaical, because that's really important on the way too. But it is saying, we're not staying here. We are going to get closer and closer to Jesus. And I know for swearing, for me, as I've gotten older and tried to be a disciple of Jesus, there are certain things in my life that become barometers for how my walk is going.
Right.
If I'm swearing, it's not going that well. You know, that's a barometer, that's a heart check, it's a tool I can use to say you are out of sync with the Holy Spirit right now because your mouth is not glorifying God.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the book of James, James tells us that there are peoples whose tongues are set on fire by hell. Mm-hmm. And the idea that, you know, both life and death reside in the tongue is really impactful to realize that our words have tremendous weight and we are going to answer for every word that we've spoken. And that's a really scary thought sometimes. Now, thankfully, as believers, we're going to go to the mercy seat.
Right.
But it is the idea for me that everything I say is recorded and is known and has weight and has the power of life and death. So how important is it for me to really monitor my speech?
Right. And I mean, that's a great point. I just, for me personally, language is one of those things that I find is the easiest thing to slip into really quick.
Yeah.
Because I grew up with that language, right? And I spent, you know, I've probably been a believer for 3 years now, right? So, I mean, for the first 29 years, right, that like there was nothing wrong with it, right? And it's so easy that once you invite some of that music in, some of that language in, you start slipping up, I find that it like starts to spiral real fast. And I have to like catch myself every time. And then like I literally will be about to like say something and I'll just start like stumbling over my words. Like it'll seem like I'm like having an aneurysm or a stroke because like I'm like no, I was about to use a word, now I'm like searching for like another way to say it and like no, I'm not going to do that, you know. And so it's like it's something that has really affected me and I've had to do my best to eliminate it from my music.
And you know, it's interesting too, the opposite, the upward spiral exists too. And I've seen this in my life. People of my friends that are non-believers, even some that are believers, don't like swearing around me because I don't swear. Mm-hmm. It's not because I've told them not to. It's not because of anything other than the fact that when I'm with Cam, he doesn't do that. I feel awkward doing that. Mm-hmm. So you start to change the atmosphere. You start to go in this positive direction. And I've had conversations with people being like, why don't you swear?
Yep.
And it's an opportunity to then share the gospel with them and to be different. Like, we want to reflect Jesus in every way possible as a disciple, and changing your language is a way for the world to know that you're a disciple. Even if you're not explicitly preaching the gospel, it will lead to spiritual conversations. It will change the atmosphere. Yes. And if people know you as someone that speaks life, they will see the difference. And our words matter so much. And I think as Christians, you know, we always have the don't swear kind of thing. Like it's just this no line that's going to like only bring you down. But the reality is there is a positive uplifting effect when you change your language. It will change the atmosphere for you and it will change the atmosphere for those around you. And people want to be around life, and people that are in darkness are going to sometimes feel uncomfortable around that and will ask questions.
Yeah. I mean, and I will add to that, because one of the most convicting nights of my life with swearing was probably 2 years ago. Yeah, probably about 2 years ago, playing Xbox with some friends from back home, non-believers. And we were playing, I think, like PUBG or something. And I died and I like cussed or whatever, you know, like very flippantly, no thought, just really dumb, really stupid. And then a guy joins our party that also, like our Xbox Live party, who also grew up with, and he's going on like this horrific story. Not going to give the details, just horrific. And, you know, a question came up later, and I was like talking about stuff in the church and all that. And the guy that had said that story was like, Jared, I didn't know you were this, you know, Christian man. I wouldn't have said that in front of you. I wouldn't have, why did you let me say all that, you know? And I was just thinking, like, could you imagine if he was in the party when I said that cuss word? And it was just like, that was the moment that I was like, man, dude, the impact of language on the non-believer and how you look to the non-believer and how you affect the non-believer, to your point, I mean, you truly have to walk like Christ, because that's going to be the most uplifting thing that you can do, and it's also going to open those doors that otherwise wouldn't have been opened.
Dude, even yesterday, I run a pickleball game. We had about 16 people there, mostly from our church that were playing, and I had a non-believer friend come. And at the end of the night, he talked about how it felt different, how everyone was kind and uplifting. And one of the reasons for that is if people had been swearing, which is common when you're playing a sport, you miss a shot, you do something.
I throw my paddle.
Yeah. But he noticed the difference, and it led to us having a spiritual conversation because he is in an atmosphere that is positive and life-giving, and it makes all the difference in the world, man. So let's keep going.
So if you like that video, you can watch another one right here. And if you want to see the full podcast, you can click right here. And as always, 25% of all proceeds go to missions, and you can always check us out, disciples.us.